Hey guys, tonight we're staying up way past bedtime because some stories only come out when the janitor's keys stop jingling and the last bus sighs away into the dark. Outside, the rain is tapping on the windows like it's trying to get in, like it remembers being inside once and wants another chance. The fluorescent lights in room 112 hum that tired, end-of-day hum, the one that makes your teeth feel funny. You probably won't make it to morning after this one. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I always read them when the sky outside my own window starts going bruise-colored. Now, dim the lights, maybe crack open a window for that midnight breeze, and let's walk the halls together. It was supposed to be simple. Senior year, Mr. Harlan gave us 2 weeks for the group history project on local urban legends. And of course we all waited until the night before it was due. Me, Jenna, Marcus, and quiet little Priya, who always smelled faintly of library books and lavender. The school let us stay after hours because Jenna's mom was on the school board and learning happens at all hours. Harlan even left the side door by the gym unlocked for us. Said he trusted us not to burn the place down. Famous last words. We set up in room 112 because it had the big tables and the projector still worked. Rain started around 8, soft at first, then harder, like someone turning up a faucet. The 4 of us spread out old newspapers, microfiche printouts, and my beat-up laptop. Marcus kept making jokes about how we were basically the Scooby Gang, except nobody wanted to be Fred because of the ascot thing. Priya laughed quietly and kept glancing at the windows where the rain drew long, shaky fingers down the glass. By 9:30 the building felt bigger. You know that feeling when the custodians shut off whole wings and the silence pools in the hallways like water? That. The lights in the corridor outside our room flickered once, twice, then settled. Jenna said it was just the storm messing with the grid. She always had an answer. We were deep into the legend of the night janitor. Some say he was a custodian who hanged himself in the boiler room in 1973. Others say he never existed at all. When the PA system gave that little electronic cough it does right before morning announcements. Except it was almost 10 at night. We froze. For a second there was nothing. Then the faintest thread of music, like a scratched record playing far away. Old big band stuff, the kind my grandpa used to hum. Marcus laughed nervously. Harlan's pranking us, right? But Harlan had gone home hours ago. His Corolla wasn't in the lot anymore. I checked when I went to the vending machine. Priya closed the yearbook she'd been scanning. That's the song from the 1959 prom, she whispered. Glenn Miller. Moonlight Serenade. My grandma has the record. The music stopped as suddenly as it started. The lights buzzed louder, like they were offended we'd noticed. We tried to laugh it off and get back to work, but the room felt colder, the way it does when someone opens a door you can't see. Jenna went to close the classroom door because the draft was making the papers flutter, and that's when she noticed the hallway light at the far end, the one that leads to the old C wing, was on. Steady, warm, almost golden. C wing's been closed since the flood in 2011. Everyone knows that. The doors are chained, the floors buckled, and half the ceiling tiles are still swollen with old water. Nobody turns those lights on. Jenna tilted her head. Did maintenance finally fix it? Marcus was already halfway to the door. Only one way to find out. I should have said no. I should have reminded them we had a project due, that thunder was rolling now like God clearing his throat, that the rational thing was to stay put. But curiosity is a hell of a drug, especially when you're 17 and convinced nothing can touch you. We grabbed our phones for light and stepped into the corridor. The floor was wet. Someone had tracked in rain, or maybe the roof was leaking again. Our shoes squeaked. The golden light from Sea Wing glowed brighter the closer we got, and underneath the storm I swear I could still hear that faint trumpet from Moonlight Serenade, drifting like smoke. Priya stopped at the chains across the double doors. They were old, rusted, padlocked for years. Except the padlock hung open, the hasp sliced clean like with bolt cutters. Fresh metal glinted inside the cut. Marcus reached for the door handle. I think some lessons were never meant to be taught, but we were about to enroll anyway. He pushed the doors open, and the smell hit us. Wet paper, old chalk, and something metallic like pennies left in the rain. The hallway stretched ahead exactly the way it looked in the 2009 yearbook photos. Before the flood, rows of lockers painted that awful pea green, trophy cases full of dusty basketball pictures, bulletin boards with faded construction paper letters spelling "Welcome back, class of '09." Except everything was pristine. No water damage. No warped tiles. The overhead lights glowed soft and steady, the way they did when we were kids, and the school still felt safe. Jenna stepped through first, phone flashlight off because she didn't need it anymore. This isn't possible. Priya's voice was barely air. We shouldn't be here. But we were, all four of us, standing in a part of the building that had been condemned for over a decade. And somewhere deeper in that golden hallway, a locker slammed shut all by itself. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Then another locker. And another. Like someone, or something, was walking the row, checking which ones were empty. Marcus looked back at me, his usual smirk gone. "Tell me you guys heard that too." I nodded, throat dry. The rain on the roof sounded miles away now. We were inside something that remembered being whole, and it was starting to remember us. Marcus took one more step, then another, like the hallway was pulling him on an invisible string. The rest of us followed because that's what you do when you're 17 and someone braver than you moves first. The air in Sea Wing tasted different, colder, thicker, the way the nurse's office smells right before you get a shot. Our footsteps sounded wrong, too loud, like the floor was hollow underneath. Lockers kept slamming, slow and deliberate. Not random, rhythmic. One every 3 seconds, moving away from us down the corridor. Slam. Pause. Slam. Like a heartbeat made of metal. Jenna whispered. "It's just the wind moving through the vents. Old buildings do that." But there was no wind in here. The air was perfectly still, the kind of still that makes your ears ring. We passed the trophy case. The glass was clean, no dust. Inside, the basketball team from 2008 grinned out at us in their maroon jerseys, all teeth and acne. I recognized one of the guys, Tyler Grant, who graduated and then wrapped his Civic around a tree on graduation night. His photo was front and center, holding the regional championship ball. Someone had tucked a fresh red carnation into the corner of the frame. The petals were still wet. Priya reached out and touched the glass. These flowers weren't here yesterday. I walk past the chain doors every day for yearbook club. There's never flowers. Marcus tried to laugh it off, but it came out strangled. Maybe the janitors have a secret admirer thing going on. The next locker slammed so hard the vibration rattled the trophies. We all jumped. My phone flashlight flicked on by reflex, cutting a white tunnel through the golden light. The beam landed on a bulletin board we were about to pass. Construction paper letters, the same faded colors from the welcome sign, spelled out in fresh block handwriting. Group project partners. Jenna, Marcus, Priya. Report to room 204 when the bell rings. Underneath, someone had drawn a little smiley face with X's for eyes. There are no bells after 9 p.m. Everyone knows that. Jenna's face went the color of notebook paper. That's our group. Exactly. Priya started shaking her head, small, fast jerks like a broken doll. We need to leave. Right now. But the way back didn't feel like the way back anymore. The double doors we'd come through were still there, 30 feet behind us, but the chains hung straight and whole again. Padlocks snapped shut, no slice in the metal, like they'd never been cut. Marcus grabbed the handles anyway and yanked. Nothing. He threw his shoulder against them. The doors didn't even rattle. That's when the music came back. Moonlight Serenade. Clearer now, leaking from the little round speakers bolted high in the corners. The ones that haven't worked since the district switched to the new PA system in 2014. The trumpet part rose and fell like breathing. I felt it in my chest first, then my knees. A pressure, like the building was pressing down on us from above, gentle but undeniable. Priya made this small hurt sound and folded to the floor, hugging her knees. Jenna stared at the bulletin board like it might change its mind if she looked hard enough. Marcus turned to me, eyes wide. "Tell me you have service." I already knew I didn't. 0 bars. The emergency exit signs glowed their usual dull red, but the little Wi-Fi icons on all our phones were gone. Not even the ghost of a signal. Another locker slammed, closer this time, 10 feet ahead. Then silence. The music cut off mid-note. In that vacuum I heard something else. Chalk on a blackboard, slow and patient. Scree, scree. Like a teacher underlining a word they really want you to remember. Room 204 was at the very end of C-Wing. I knew that because my mom had gone here in the 90s and told me stories about the substitute who disappeared. Everyone knew. They renamed the drama room after her for a while, then quietly stopped saying her name at all. The chalk sound was coming from inside 204. Jenna took one step backward, and her heel landed in something wet. We looked down. A thin trail of water, no, not water, too dark, was seeping under the bottom of the classroom door. It spread across the tiles in a perfect straight line, like someone had drawn it with a ruler. The smell hit a second later, damp paper and that sharp metallic bite again. Priya started crying without sound, just tears sliding fast. Marcus wiped his palms on his jeans. Okay. We walk to the end. We look in the room. We figure out what the hell this is, and then we find another way out. Stairwell B is down there, right? The one that goes to the gym. I wanted to tell him Stairwell B had been bricked up after the flood, but my tongue felt too thick. The chalk stopped. A new sound started. A single desk dragging across the floor inside 204. Once, twice, then quiet, like someone had finally sat down. The door to 204 was old wood with that frosted window at the top, the kind with the wire mesh inside. The mesh made everything behind it look like graph paper. Something moved on the other side, tall, thin, patient. Jenna grabbed my wrist so hard her nails dug in. "Don't look up at the window," she breathed. Of course I looked. For just a second, a silhouette stood there. No face, just darkness shaped like a person in a long coat. Then the overhead light inside the room flickered and the shape was gone. But the door handle began to turn, slow, like whoever was on the other side had all night. I think some places keep pieces of the people who never really left. And tonight, C-Wing was hungry for new students. Marcus did the only thing he could think of. He bolted forward, past the leaking door, past the fresh bulletin board, all the way to the dead end where the hallway just stopped. The rest of us stumbled after him because running felt better than standing still. There was no stairwell B anymore. Just a cinder block wall painted the same pea green as the lockers, smooth and new, like it had always been there. Behind us, the door to 204 opened with a soft, polite click. We didn't scream. I think that's what I remember most. How the four of us just stopped breathing at the same time, like the air itself had been pulled out of the hallway by a hand we couldn't see. The door to 204 hung open about 8 inches. From where we stood, pressed against the dead-end wall, I could see one slice of the classroom. The corner of a teacher's desk, a stack of yellowed attendance sheets lifting and settling in a breeze that wasn't there, and the edge of the chalkboard. Someone had written across it in huge, looping cursive, "Welcome back, class. Please take your seats. The lesson is about to begin." The chalk was still in motion, moving by itself, finishing the tail of the last N with a little flourish before it dropped to the tray and broke in half. Marcus's voice cracked. "That's not funny. Whoever's in there, this isn't funny." No answer. Just the soft creak of the door easing open another inch, like it was shy. Priya was whispering something under her breath. Prayer, maybe, or just numbers. Her fingers worried the little silver bracelet she always wore, the one with the tiny engraved lotus. I wanted to tell her to stop, that the clicking sounded too loud, but I couldn't make my mouth work. Jenna took one deliberate step forward. She's always been the brave one, the girl who asked teachers why we couldn't dissect the fetal pig if it was already dead, the one who climbed the water tower on a dare. She squared her shoulders like she was walking into the principal's office instead of whatever this was. "Show yourself," she said. Her voice didn't shake. I hated her a little for that. The lights inside 204 brightened, just that room, like someone had turned a dimmer switch the wrong way. The glow spilled out into the hallway and painted us gold. And then we saw her. She stood at the front of the room in a navy skirt and cream blouse, hair in that perfect 90s teacher bun, the kind held together with two pencils. Mrs. Calloway. Everyone knew the substitute who vanished in '98. There were still missing posters in the trophy case outside the auditorium, edges curled, her faculty photos smiling like nothing had ever gone wrong. She looked exactly like the posters, except her eyes were wrong. Too dark, no pupils, just wet black glass reflecting the room back at us. She held a piece of chalk between her fingers like a cigarette. "Seats," she said, and her voice came from everywhere and nowhere, from the PA speakers and the floor and inside my own skull. "We're running behind." The desks inside the room were full. That's what broke me first. Every seat had a kid in it, back straight, hands folded. I recognized some of them from old yearbook pages. Tyler Grant with his championship grin, Sarah Park who drowned in the quarry sophomore year, even little Emil Ramirez who got leukemia in 6th grade and never came back after Christmas break. They wore the clothes they died in. Tyler's Letterman jacket still had the grass stains on the shoulder from the night he crashed. None of them blinked. Mrs. Calloway smiled the way teachers do when they already know you didn't do the reading. "Jenna, Marcus, Priya." She paused and looked straight at me, and I felt my name leave my body like it didn't belong to me anymore. And of course our narrator. "I saved you the front row." For empty desks waited right beneath the chalkboard. Name tags and red construction paper, our handwriting exactly. Jenna took another step. The door opened all the way now, inviting. "Don't," Priya whimpered. But Jenna was already moving, drawn forward the way iron filings slide toward a magnet you can't see. Marcus swore under his breath and went after her. He always followed Jenna, even when we were kids, and she decided the storm drain looked like an adventure. I grabbed Priya's wrist. Her pulse was frantic under the bracelet. "We stay together," I said, and I honestly believed it would help. We crossed the threshold. The door shut behind us with the soft finality of a coffin lid. No slam, no drama, just closed. The room smelled like chalk dust and pencil shavings and the strawberry shampoo Sarah Park used to wear. The clock above the board was stuck at 11:07, second hand twitching but never quite making it to 11:08. Mrs. Calloway turned to the board and began writing again. Each letter appeared before the chalk touched, like the words were already there and she was just uncovering them. Today's lesson: what happens to students who never graduate? She underlined it twice, then faced us. The dead kids turned their heads in perfect sync, following her like flowers tracking the sun. Please, Jenna said. We just want to go home. Mrs. Calloway tilted her head. But you are home. This is where you stay after school. Forever is such an ugly word. We prefer extended enrollment. Marcus lunged for the door. His hand went straight through the knob like it was made of cold smoke. When he pulled back, his fingers were smudged with wet ash. Priya started crying harder, but silently, shoulders shaking. I felt it rising in my own throat, that animal noise you can't let out because once it starts it never stops. Mrs. Calloway pointed at the empty desks. Sit, or we'll begin without you. And that's so much less pleasant. We sat. The chair was warm, like someone had just stood up. My name tag was in my own handwriting, the little loop on the Y I've had since 3rd grade. I looked at the others, same thing. We'd written these ourselves, sometime, somehow. The dead kids smiled all at once. Their teeth were too white. Mrs. Calloway picked up a thick manila folder from her desk and let it fall open. Inside were our faces, school photos from this year, last year, every year. But the eyes were scratched out with something sharp, deep gouges that left curls of glossy paper on the blotter. She tapped the stack. Permanent records, she said gently. Some of you have been overdue for quite a while. On the wall behind her, the classroom clock jerked forward. 11:08. Somewhere far away, I heard the faint ding of a bell that hadn't rung in decades. I think some teachers never stopped teaching, even when the students stopped breathing. The bell kept ringing, but it wasn't a bell anymore. It was the sound your teeth make when you're so cold you can't feel your tongue. One long, cracked note that lived inside the walls. Mrs. Calloway didn't seem to hear it. She was passing out worksheets, the old kind with purple ditto ink that still smelled faintly of alcohol and childhood dread. The paper was warm, damp, like it had been held too close to someone's skin. I looked down at mine. Across the top, in that same looping cursive, pop quiz. Answer honestly. There is no extra credit for lies. Question 1. When did you first realize you weren't going to leave? There was already an answer written in my handwriting. Tonight. I never wrote it. I swear I never wrote it. Jenna's hand shot up the way it always did in calculus when she knew she was right. This isn't real, she said, voice shaking but loud. None of this is real. Mrs. Calloway smiled the way a librarian smiles when you ask for a book that was removed from circulation. Reality is a senior privilege, dear. You haven't graduated. Marcus tried to stand. The legs of his chair scraped once and then fused to the floor with a wet, sucking sound, like roots growing in fast forward. He sat back down hard, eyes huge. Priya was staring at the windows. There were no windows in 204, at least there never used to be. But now there were 6 tall ones along the far wall, black glass reflecting the room back at us. Only the reflections were wrong. In the glass, the 4 of us were already sitting with the dead kids, uniforms crisp, hair neat, smiles vacant. The reflection versions turned their heads a half second after we did, like bad satellite delay. Priya whispered, "They're waiting for us to catch up." Mrs. Calloway clapped once, soft. "Bathroom passes. One at a time. You know the rule." None of us moved. She pointed at me with the same finger that had scratched out our eyes in the photos. "You first. You always were the storyteller. Go look in the mirror and tell me what you see." The door opened by itself again, revealing the hallway we'd come from. Only now it was shorter, darker, the golden light gone cold and blue like moonlight underwater. At the far end, the boys' bathroom sign flickered. I didn't want to go. My legs carried me anyway. The hallway floor was wetter now, ankle deep in places, but the water didn't splash when I stepped in it. It just parted, thick and oily, closing behind me without ripples. The lockers were open, all of them, doors yawning like mouths. Inside each one hung a single uniform shirt on a wire hanger, swaying gently. My name was stitched on every breast pocket in red thread that hadn't quite dried. The bathroom door was already ajar. The overhead light buzzed, strobing slow enough to make everything look like stop motion. I stepped inside. The mirrors were old, the silver backing flaking in black leopard spots. There were 4 sinks. For mirrors, I stood in front of the second one. At first it showed me, pale, shaking, rain still dripping from my hair even though I hadn't been outside in hours. Then the reflection smiled when I didn't. A small, polite smile, the kind you give a teacher when you're lying about finishing the homework. The reflection lifted its hand a full second after I told my own hand to stay still. "Hey," I said to it, because that's what you do when your own face starts acting like customer service. It tilted its head, still smiling, and mouthed something I couldn't hear through the glass. I leaned closer. It leaned closer faster. Our foreheads almost touched the mirror at the same time, but mine stopped, and its didn't. The surface rippled like water, and cold fingers slid out and cupped the back of my neck. Gentle, familiar. The way my mom used to check for fever. The reflection spoke without moving its lips, voice coming from inside my skull the same way Mrs. Calloway's had. "You're late," it said, and its breath smelled like the inside of my childhood bedroom the night I couldn't sleep because I was sure something was under the bed. "We saved you a seat." Behind the reflection, the bathroom stretched backward forever, rows of sinks and mirrors repeating into darkness. In every mirror, a version of me sat at a desk, head down, writing. Some looked 12 years old. Some looked 40. Some had gray in their hair and still wore our high school ID lanyard like a noose. They were all taking the same quiz. I tried to pull away, but the hand on my neck tightened just enough to remind me it could. The reflection's eyes were black from edge to edge now, no whites left. "Stay," it whispered, and the word tasted like the last day of summer vacation. "You already know how this story ends. You've been telling it your whole life." The mirror went soft, like melting ice. I felt myself tipping forward. Then Priya screamed from the classroom, raw and shredded, the sound of someone discovering a word they never wanted to learn. The hand let go. I stumbled backward, slipped on the wet tile, and the mirror snapped back to solid with a sound like a jaw closing. My reflection stood there alone now, waving goodbye with my own hand. The bathroom lights went out. I ran. The hallway had shrunk again. The classroom door was only 10 feet away, but it took forever to reach it, like running in a dream where the air is made of syrup. When I burst through, the other 3 were on their feet, chairs overturned. Jenna was bleeding from a thin line across her palm, like she'd grabbed something sharp. Marcus was staring at the windows. The reflections had stepped out. They stood among the desks now. 4 more of us, dripping that same dark water, uniforms perfect, smiles identical to the ones we weren't wearing. The dead kids didn't seem to mind the extra company. There were plenty of seats. Mrs. Calloway hadn't moved from the front. She held Jenna's quiz, red pen poised. "Time's almost up," she said gently. "And some of you still haven't answered the last question." I looked down at my own paper. The final line had appeared while I was gone. Question 12. "Will you stay and finish the assignment, or do we mark you absent forever?" 2 boxes. No pencil in my hand anymore. I think some mirrors don't show you who you are. They show you who you're about to become if you don't start running. Priya grabbed my sleeve, nails digging in. "Basement," she hissed. "There's a door behind the supply closet." I saw it open when the lights flickered. Marcus was already moving, knocking over desks like dominoes. The reflection versions turned to watch us the way you watch a movie you've seen before. Mrs. Calloway sighed, the sound of every disappointed teacher who ever lived. "Detention," she said, "is held downstairs." The PA crackled overhead, and for the first time a new voice came through. Older, crackly, like a recording played too many times. "Attention all remaining students. Please proceed to the basement for final roll call." My name was first. The supply closet door at the back of room 204 had never been there before. I would swear on every yearbook, every fire drill map, every memory of hiding in there to skip gym. There was only a cinder block wall behind the shelves of dried-up tempera paint and boxes of broken recorders. Yet when Priya yanked the metal shelving unit aside, the hinges squealed and the whole thing swung out like a bank vault. A narrow staircase spiraled down, lit by a single red exit sign that buzzed like a dying insect. The steps were wet concrete, slick with something darker than water. The smell hit us immediately. Old pennies, mold, and the unmistakable sweetness of the cafeteria's Tuesday lasagna rotting since the Clinton administration. Marcus didn't hesitate. He was through the opening before any of us could think. Jenna followed, pressing her bleeding palm against her hoodie to leave a rust-colored handprint on the gray fabric. Priya looked back once, at the reflection versions now sitting calmly in our seats, already opening textbooks we never had. And then she grabbed my wrist and pulled. The door shut behind us on its own. The click echoed all the way down the stairwell like a judge's gavel. We descended. The walls wept, not metaphorically, actual drops sliding down the painted cinder blocks, forming little rivers that met at our shoes. Every 10 steps the red bulb flickered and the temperature dropped another degree. My breath came out in soft white puffs that hung too long, like the air didn't want to let them go. Halfway down, the PA speakers embedded in the ceiling crackled again. This time the voice was younger, familiar, terrified. It was me. My own voice, recorded sometime I don't remember. "Testing, testing, is this thing on? If anyone can hear this, we're trapped in the basement. Send help, please." Static swallowed the rest. Jenna stopped walking. "That's not possible," she whispered. "You're right here." I was. But the recording kept looping, overlapping itself. Dozens of versions of me pleading at once until it sounded like a chorus of kids who never made it back up the stairs. Priya covered her ears. "Make it stop." It didn't. It got louder. We reached the bottom. The basement was never on any tour. Students joked about it the way sailors joke about krakens, half myth, half warning. Rumors said it flooded so bad in '73 that they just sealed it and built the new gym on top. Rumor also said the night janitor hanged himself from the main pipe and still walks the corridors dripping. Tonight, the rumors were auditioning for the truth. The hallway stretched in both directions, lit by naked bulbs and wire cages. Lockers down here were ancient, tall, narrow, painted institutional gray with combination locks so rusted they looked like scabs. Each locker had a nameplate, but the letters were raised scars in the metal like they'd been branded. I saw mine immediately. My combination, 17-34-09, was already dialed in. The lock hung open. Inside was my backpack. The same one I'd left upstairs in 112, only older. The canvas had faded to the color of bones, the zipper broken, and something dark had soaked through the bottom and dried in stiff patches. On the front pocket, my keychain picture of my dog, the one who died when I was 12, stared out at me through cracked plastic. Marcus found his next. His varsity jacket hung on the hook, sleeves dripping. Jenna's cheerleading pom-poms lay in a puddle that reflected the red light like fresh blood. Priya's lotus bracelet sat coiled on a stack of waterlogged library books. pages swollen into one solid brick. None of us touched anything. The PA voice changed again. Now it was Principal Klein, who retired in 2005. Attention! Final roll call for students who have not yet satisfied graduation requirements. When your name is called, please step forward. A long pause. The bulbs flickered in sequence, like they were counting. Tyler Grant. Somewhere down the hall, a locker slammed. Sarah Park. Another slam. Closer. Emil Ramirez. Closer still. Jenna's face went gray. They're reading the names of everyone who. Jenna Marie Holt. The slam was right behind us. We ran. The hallway forked and forked again, a maze that rebuilt itself every time we blinked. Pipes overhead dripped in perfect rhythm with our footsteps. The floor slanted downward, gentle but relentless, like the building was slowly swallowing us whole. At the next intersection, we skidded to a stop. The old announcement booth, the one the AV Club used before everything went digital, stood in the center of the corridor, glass walls fogged with condensation. Inside, a reel-to-reel recorder the size of a suitcase turned slowly. The tape spooled from one fat reel to the other, brown and brittle, yet it kept moving. On the microphone stand, a single red light glowed. Someone was broadcasting live. Marcus wiped condensation from the glass. His breath fogged it again instantly, but not before we saw the figure seated at the console. It was Mrs. Calloway, but wrong. Taller, stretched, coat soaked, and clinging like wet paper. Her mouth was open far too wide, lips peeled back, and the microphone disappeared down her throat like she was swallowing the sound itself. She turned her head 180 degrees without moving her shoulders and looked straight at us. The red light pulsed brighter. My name came next, but it wasn't Principal Klein's voice anymore. It was all of them. Every student who ever sat in detention, every teacher who ever died at their desk, every janitor who never clocked out, speaking in perfect, terrible unison. Report to the auditorium for commencement exercises. Caps and gowns are optional. Attendance is not. The tape sped up. The reels blurred. Priya pointed with a trembling finger. Past the booth, a set of double doors stood ajar. Beyond them, darkness and the faint smell of chlorine from the old pool that was supposedly filled in decades ago. Between us and those doors, the floor was covered with graduation caps. Hundreds of them, mortarboards arranged in perfect rows like graves. Some still had tassels. Some had hair caught in the elastic. Jenna started laughing, high and broken. "We're going to miss curfew," she said, and stepped onto the caps. They crunched like eggshells. Underneath was not concrete. It was water, black, still, and deep enough that her foot disappeared to the ankle. The caps floated for a second, then sank. Marcus grabbed her arm, but she shook him off and kept walking, each step sending out slow ripples that carried away the names stitched inside the caps. Priya looked at me, eyes ancient. "The pool's the way out," she said, as if she'd always known. "Or the way in. Same thing down here." The PA voice spoke one last time, soft now, almost kind. "Last chance to turn in your late work." Behind us, the lockers began opening by themselves, one after another, slow as confession. I took Priya's hand. Marcus took Jenna's. We stepped onto the caps together. They held. For now, I think some announcements aren't meant to be answered. They're just reminders that class is still in session, and the bell you're waiting for might never ring. The graduation caps carried us like a raft made of memory. Each step pressed a year into the black water beneath. 2003, 1998, 1973, until the numbers stopped meaning anything and became just the sound of things sinking. Jenna walked first, bleeding palm, leaving prints that dissolved too slowly. Marcus kept muttering, "This isn't happening," on a loop, the way people do when happening is the only thing left. Priya's fingers were ice in mine, but she didn't let go. None of us did. The double doors at the far end grew taller the closer we got, until they were the height of the old auditorium entrance, the one they bricked over when the new Performing Arts Center went in. Paint peeled in long strips like dead skin. Someone had scratched a message into the metal with a hall pass or a house key. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. The doors opened before we touched them. Inside was the pool, not filled in, not drained, full to the brim with perfectly still water that reflected the ceiling like smoked glass. The diving boards were still there, high and low, but the ladders had rusted away to red lace. Around the edge, in the gutter where lost goggles and band-aids used to collect, sat rows of seniors in caps and gowns. Motionless, eyes open, water lapped at their knees, gentle, almost affectionate. I recognized some from the missing posters that still yellowed in the front office display case. Class of 89, 94, 2001. Their tassels floated like gold seaweed. At the far end, on the lifeguard chair that no one had sat in for 30 years, Mrs. Calloway waited. She wore a graduation gown now, black polyester shining wet. The hood was pulled up, but I could still see her mouth, too wide, smiling the way a stapler smiles when it bites. On the scoreboard, the old analog clock that used to count swim meets read 11:59. It had read 11:59 for as long as anyone could remember. "Congratulations," she said, and every capped head around the pool turned toward us in one liquid motion. "You've completed your credit requirements. All that remains is the final exam." Jenna's voice cracked. "Let us go." Mrs. Calloway tilted her head. "But you never arrived. That's the beauty of it. The four of you left room 112 at 9:47 p.m. on November 17th to get poster board from the art closet. You never came back. Search parties found your phones in the parking lot, soaked. Everyone assumed you ran away. Tragic, really. Very cinematic." Marcus took a shaking step forward. Water sloshed over the edge of the pool and ran across the tile toward us in perfect straight lines, like it had places to be. "You're lying," he said. The scoreboard clicked. 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 3 seconds. It had never done that before. Mrs. Calloway stood. The lifeguard chair groaned under weight that shouldn't have been there. "One question," she said. "Answer correctly, and the doors behind you open to the senior parking lot. 7:02 a.m., the morning the project is due. You'll be tired, wet, but alive. Your families will cry happy tears. You'll graduate in May." "Lie," she spread her arms. The graduates around the pool mirrored her, water cascading from their sleeves. "And you join the honor roll permanently." Priya's grip tightened until I felt bones grind. "What's the question?" she asked, so quietly I almost missed it. Mrs. Calloway's smile finally reached her eyes, and the eyes kept smiling when the mouth stopped. "What did you really come here to learn tonight?" Silence thicker than the water. The clock ticked again, 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 7 seconds. Jenna laughed, one sharp bark. "Local urban legends." That was the assignment. Mrs. Calloway waited. Marcus shook his head. "We came to finish the stupid project so we could graduate and get out of this town." Another tick. 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 11 seconds. Priya was crying again, but her voice stayed steady. "I came because you were my friends, and I didn't want to be alone." The water around the pool began to rise, slow as mercury, climbing the tiles. I felt it then, the real weight of the question, heavy as the building itself pressing down. All the nights I'd spent telling these stories to strangers online, the comments I refreshed like prayer beads, the way dread felt safer than hope because at least dread couldn't disappoint you. I looked at the three of them, Jenna bleeding and furious, Marcus shaking with rage he didn't know how to aim, Priya holding on to me like I was the last real thing in the world, and I answered. "We came," I said, "because we were afraid of what happens after graduation, of becoming adults who forget what it felt like to be terrified together in these hallways. We stayed late because for one more night we could pretend the world still had mysteries bigger than rent and resumes. We walked into C Wing because some part of us wanted to believe the stories were true, that something could still catch us and keep us from growing up and growing apart and disappearing the way everyone does." My voice didn't echo. The pool drank it. Mrs. Calloway's smile softened, almost human. "Correct," she whispered. The clock hit 12 o'clock. Every bulb in the building surged white, then died. When the darkness lifted, we were standing in the senior parking lot. Dawn, cold and pink, just starting to bruise the horizon. Our phones read 7:02 a.m., batteries dead. Jenna's hand had stopped bleeding, the cut scabbed over like it happened days ago. The school behind us looked normal. Chains on C Wing, flood damage plain as ever, no music leaking from dead speakers. We never spoke of it again. Not really. We turned the project in. Mr. Harlan said the local legend section was unusually vivid. We graduated. Jenna went to state, Marcus enlisted, Priya got into Yale, early decision. I kept making videos, but I stopped doing school stories. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that trumpet riff from Moonlight Serenade when I'm half asleep. And once, years later, I went back for homecoming. The pool really is filled in now, just a concrete floor under the new weight room. But when I stood at the far end, I swear the scoreboard flickered. 11:59. I think some lessons were never meant to be taught. They were meant to be survived. And some nights, when the hallways of wherever I am now feel too quiet, I wonder which of us actually walked out of that pool, and which of us is still down there, waiting for the next group that stays too late. It's quiet now. Not the kind of quiet that follows a storm, but the kind that comes after the last bell of the last day, when even the echoes have graduated and moved on. Outside my window, the rain has stopped pretending it wants in. The streetlight flickers once, twice, then settles into its tired orange glow. My phone says 3:17 a.m., the hour when even the internet feels ashamed of itself. I left the window cracked the way you asked.